Hello and welcome to the Odds Now YouTube channel for your Monday rundown of all the action at the PDC World Championship. We're going to see the conclusion of the last 16 stage, which got underway last night with a seismic shock, didn't it? Luke Humphries, world champion, world number one, dumped out by the former two-time champion Peter Wright in a classic contest. Peter Wright rolling back the years. I've been very honest and open. I had a big position on Humphries. I had him running on a couple of nice multiples and bits and pieces. I really did think he was the most likely winner this year's World Championship, but got to hold your hands up when you see quality and class right. Rolled back the years, he was sublime. I think he was about 65-70% on the doubles as well. Took his chances, held his nerve in all the big moments. It was vintage snakebite, and Humphries didn't play badly in defeat at all. Magnanimous in defeat as well. I always find it quite sad when he gets such a negative reaction from the crowd, really, because I do think he's one of the best we've ever seen, and I think he's a great ambassador for the sport. I'm sure he'll be back. But that stung from a financial perspective. Also lost Johnny Clayton, who was a lot more speculative chance as well. But, traded him at three figures and managed to get out of that trade, with a little bit in hand, but still had him running for a nice position. So I was a bit gutted that he couldn't have got past Gerwen Price, particularly with my other big hope, Chris Dobey, set to face Price in the quarterfinals if he manages to win today, but he's still got a hurdle to negotiate. So yesterday's results, frustrating day, wasn't it? The one that annoyed me the most was probably Rids Vandenberg. Played the over 13.5 180s line, and 13 180s exactly, but there was only 4 sets. Rids went absolutely crazy on the treble 20 bet as expected. Dimitri didn't do too badly himself with 5, but unfortunately the lack of a 5th, 6th, 7th set proved very costly. If that game had gone a little bit deeper, we would have covered both lines with a bit of room to spare, but just the way it goes, unfortunately. We also hit the line on Ricky Evans over 5.5 180s here, exactly 5. So that was another frustrating one, although he had ample chance and opportunity. So that one more a case of Evans sort of blowing it a little bit against Owen there, I think. But did have a nice winner with Kevin Dutz, 2 points on him to beat Ratajski at 13-10. Which obliged. And that's where we start today's games with Chris Dobey taking on Kevin Dutz in the first game of the afternoon. Dobey, as I say, is my best remaining outright position. Someone I've been nibbling away at all year, a little bit like I did with Humphries. And, anyone that's followed my content will know how highly I think of Dobey. I do think he's a world champion in weighting. He's got all the class, and his Alexandra Palace record is exemplary. He was really, really good in beating Josh Rock 4-2 last time out, where Rock turned up, played well, 96 average, I think it was, from Rock. But Dobey, held his nerve. He won a pivotal 5th set, I think, where Rock had a set dart to win that. And then tore away 100% on the doubles in the final set to win it 4-2. So really happy with how Dobey's playing and growing into this tournament. He takes on Dutz here, who did us a favour yesterday, winning at 13-10 against Ratajski, but he had to work hard for it, didn't he? He was 2-0 down, 3-2 down, eventually coming through to win 4-3. He played in fits and starts, which is kind of what I think he did against Michael Smith as well. I mean, that Michael Smith game was a bit of a nothing game for 4 sets, and then it exploded into life in the final set, where Dutz averaged 106, but for the rest of the game, he'd been averaging about 93. And he was very patchy up and down against Ratajski as well. A couple of fantastic sets in there, but some very flat spots as well. And I think ultimately, when I look at this game, Dobey 1-3, Dutz out at 13-5, best price. I think that's right, because Dobey is a mark of consistency. Look at the players it's taken to knock him out over the years. In the last 3 years alone, I think he's gone out to Cross, MVG, and Humphries. Go a little bit further back than that, it's the likes of Dave Chisnell, Phil Taylor, Peter Wright. It's always a world-class opponent that tends to stop him here. If hopefully he won't be stopped this year. But so I'm just not sure Dutz has the consistency to live with Dobey. I expect him to get a set or 2, but I do ultimately think Dobey will prevail. Now, looking at the 180 stats, Dobey's ahead on the seasonal stats, and he's ahead on the 180s per leg stat in this tournament. As I said, Dutz's 180s line a little bit misleading, because he hit 6 of his 10 180s against Michael Smith in the final set, which obviously went to added time, if you will. So that skewers his line a little bit. In reality, if we balance that figure out, there is a little bit of a disparity between these two. As I say, I expect Dutz to have a good set or 2 here and there, but I think Dobey's consistency probably gets him over the line here. I think backing Dobey, who, as I say, is a best price of 1 to 3, to win this and hit the most 180s, which is how I see it going, at 5 to 6 is a really rock solid bet for this opening game. So that's going to be my play. 5 to 6, that is available pretty much everywhere. And yeah, I noticed Bet365 have actually got that 4 to 9, which is, maybe a good indicator of where it should be. Second game of the afternoon is Robert Owen versus Callan Rydz. Not many people would have predicted this as a last 16 clash. This is a no-bet game for me, but just a little bit of context on why that is the case. Rydz is the only player still to drop a set at this year's tournament. He's 10-0 in sets, having whitewashed Gerber, Schindler, and then brilliant yesterday afternoon against Dimitri Vandenberg. But I do want to see what happens to Rydz when he's put under the cosh a little bit, because there have been opportunities missed by his opponents against him. It's not all been plain sailing, particularly the game against Schindler. I think he was something like 9 from 30 something on his doubles. Schindler was even worse somehow. So that was maybe his kind of lucky break. But his finishing yesterday was exemplary, up over 50% against Dimitri. He didn't give him a sniff. He was really up for that game. I think he talked in his post-match press conference about seeing Dimitri make some strange comments that kind of riled him up, said that was the fire I needed. I wonder what the fire will be against Robert Owen, somebody that Rydz probably not used to playing. I don't think they've ever met on a big stage. Robert Owen's not had any runs like this previously, but he took care of Ricky Evans. Although I will say, I think Ricky Evans took care of himself a little bit. That was a really good game up until 2-2. But there was a leg there in set 5 where Evans really messed it up from a commanding position. Owen took it and he never recovered from that point, I didn't think. And Owen raced to this finishing line, but Evans averaged just 75 in that last set. So, you'd question the form in the last set at least. But Robert Owen, you can't help but shower praise on him. He's come here with the ultimate pressure on his shoulders of trying to save his tour card. He thought he'd done enough against Gabriel Clemens. He then had to dust himself down and beat Ricky Evans. He's been the underdog in all these games. He'll be the underdog here again today. But I've seen a little bit of money for Owen. He looks like he's going to go for around the 9 to 4 mark, which I think is about right. I think Rydz, if he reproduces anything like we've seen over the last 3 games, he'll have a little bit too much for Owen, particularly in the scoring department, I think. But I don't want to get involved in this because I don't think we've seen Rydz bang under it yet. We've not seen many games other than the Gerber game where he was a red-hot favourite. Now there's a lot of scrutiny on it. Now people are starting to talk about, can he win this tournament? And it's a different question being asked of him there. So I think given he's a short favourite, don't really want to get with Owen at 9 to 4. I think Rydz will prevail, but it's a watching brief for me. Last game of the afternoon is Ricardo Pietreczko taking on Nathan Aspinall. I'm going to chance the German here at 6 to 5. It's quite a confident bet as well, actually. Similar situation to Dutz yesterday, actually. I looked at this market. I expected this to be kind of 10 to 11 either way. A lot of money coming for Aspinall. I don't really get that, to be honest. Of course, he could win this. I don't think there's much between these two players, but look at what we've actually seen from Aspinall thus far. Yes, he beat Andrew Gilding 4-0 in his last game. It still wasn't a vintage performance, was it? He was averaging about 92, and that's despite a really good doubling performance. So that tells you everything you need to know about his scoring phase. It's not quite there. His first 3 darts in that game averaged 94, whereas Pietreczko's first 3 darts in beating Scott Williams 4-1 were more like 110. So there's a massive disparity there in the scoring, which Aspinall has got to make up. Yes, his finishing is exemplary. Yes, he'll have himself pumped up for this. I noticed that he called Pietreczko an unusual character after his win over Gilding. That might just fire Pietreczko up. He certainly looked like he was fired up to beat Scott Williams, and I thought that the partisan crowd could be an issue there. Even though I backed Pietreczko, I was worried about the crowd. I didn't need to be worried. It was basically like 50-50 crowd. There's so many Germans travel over now. He is the last German standing. He has been for a little while. He'll have tremendous backing in the arena, as will Aspinall. I think it'll be a really feisty occasion. And I don't see much between these two players. I think Pietreczko is growing into this tournament. He was excellent against Williams. Brilliant composure on show. He clearly is a big stage player. He doesn't produce these kind of darts on the floor, plain and simple. But when he's on that big stage, something comes to life within him. And maybe he is a little bit of an unusual character, but he's certainly proven himself to be capable of mixing it with the best here. So I think 6-5 about the upset, if you could even call it that, is good value. I'm also going to take a little chance, a point at 9-4 on over 6.5 sets. It is the kind of game I could easily see going all the way. As I say, I think Pietreczko maybe has a slight edge on the scoring based on what we've seen in the game so far. But Aspinall's finishing is exemplary. He's a dogged character. If he is under the cosh, you expect he's going to try and hang in there as long as possible. 9-4 about this going all the way. It's worth a point. I would not be surprised at all. I think it's one of the more feasible outcomes. So I will also chance that at 9-4, but 2 points on the Pietreczko win, the main bet there. Into the evening session then, Stephen Bunting taking on Luke Woodhouse. I was just had to pause for a coughing fit there. Stephen Bunting taking on Luke Woodhouse in the first game of the evening session. I'm going to back Bunting here on a -2.5 set handicap, which is effectively to win 4-0 or 4-1. Very impressed with Luke Woodhouse, the way he's got through this tournament. But I do think when you look a little bit deeper into his game against Damon Heta really threw that away, didn't he? I think he lost the last 8 or 9 legs without reply. The 9 data seemed to almost hinder him more than help him. He was 3-1 up in that game, but by his own admission, wasn't really ever playing that well, didn't ever look that settled, which sounds bizarre for somebody that hit a perfect leg, but he just didn't look his usual self, did he? And once Woodhouse sort of chipped away and made it interesting, it felt like he would prevail. That's credit to Luke Woodhouse, because he's not really been that kind of player that you can hang your hat on to turn games around in previous years. But I think he has developed as a player, but I think he maybe just comes up against a class opponent here. Stephen Bunting, we've still not seen the absolute best of him, I don't think. I was very impressed, more so with his first round game against Kai Gotthard, actually, because he was under the pump in that game, wasn't he? He was 1-0 down in the first set, Gotthard wrapped it up in rapid fashion. And then in the second set, he spurned, I think it was 3 set darts to go 2-0 up. And yeah, I thought Bunting held himself together really, really well there to turn that game on its head. He just didn't give Gotthard another look once it went 1-1. And then against Madars Razmet, 4-1 as expected. We backed Bunting on a handicap there, and he did the job for us. These aren't the kind of games where I worry about Stephen Bunting. It's when he comes up against a really high class sort of established opponent that you worry about Bunting a little bit more. But he was in that quarter with Luke Humphries, so it looks like the opportunity is there for him. He'd play Peter Wright in the quarterfinals if he prevails here, which would be a fantastic contest if Wright plays anywhere near how he did yesterday. But yeah, opportunity knocks for Bunting. I expect him to do a bit of a job on Woodhouse here. There's 13-8 about him winning 4-0 or 4-1, which looks more than fair to me for a 2-point win selection. The penultimate last 16 game of the evening is Michael van Gerwen taking on Jeffrey De Graaf. And I can see this game going one of two ways, but I think because of that, I have to play this correct score of van Gerwen to win 4-0, 16-5 about that. Now, I've actually been really, really impressed with De Graaf, the way he's held himself together. Brilliant against Gary Anderson, obviously. Very different challenge last time out against Paolo Nebride. He lost the first set and rallied to win 4-1, nearly hit a 9-darter to win the match as well. So it's been a fantastic tournament for Jeffrey De Graaf. But it does feel like one of these stories that just is going to come to a natural end here against van Gerwen. Van Gerwen, I thought he was fantastic against Brendan Dolan, to be honest. It's a stern examination from Dolan, who averaged in the high 90s. And van Gerwen just did a job on him, didn't he? Really kept him at arm's length, didn't panic when Brendan had his moments. And yeah, I think we had 10 180s from MVG, which is high by his modern standards over a game, over a 6-set contest. I thought that was, good. Bodes well for MVG backers, I think. And yeah, I could quite easily see him doing a bit of a demolition job on De Graaf. He might just run out of steam here. Of course, the other way it goes is that it becomes very tight and he ends up getting a stern examination. Do I think there's a world where Jeffrey De Graaf can beat MVG? I think there probably is, to be honest. There's been a little bit of money for him floating around today at sort of 4-1, 9-2 prices. That's the two ways I see this game going. It's either going to be very, very tight, or Van Gerwen's just going to railroad him. So I think the 16-5 about the railroading happening is more than fair, to be honest. I'll chance a point on that. I'm expecting Van Gerwen to, if he maintains the standards that he set against Dolan, which is never a guarantee with the modern MVG. You know, he has struggled badly with consistency, but I do think that he may just have far too much for De Graaf here. Okay, last game of the evening, Lukeller, the tournament favourite, now odds on in a few places to win this title. not for me. Too short. He takes on Ryan Joyce here, and this is a pure price player. I've already backed a bigger price, but I still think there's juice here. Ryan Joyce to beat Luke Littler is 7-1. Now, obviously, it's a 7-1 chance, so I'm not saying that I expect this to happen. I just feel like the price is too big, given what we've seen from both players. Joyce's finishing is always reliably exemplary, and Littler has been giving up chances in all of his games. He dodged a bullet against Ian White. It should have gone 2-2 that game. White spurning his chance to level proceedings, and from there, Littler powered on. We saw similar against Ryan Meikle when he dropped a set early and had to sort of dodge bullets to prevent that situation becoming even stickier. Now, let's just take it as a contextual example that we have a similar kind of performance here from Littler to his first two games, where starts a little bit sluggishly, gives up opportunities to his opponent. The first two games, he hasn't been fully punished. This is a man who has literally made a career on punishing opportunities. If Ryan Joyce, it's to me, this game's all about if Ryan Joyce can hold himself together. If Ryan Joyce replicates the performance he brought against Ryan Searle, I think he's got a huge chance of beating Littler here. But it's a big if, because that's as good as we've seen Joyce for a while. The scoring phase was extremely good. He was managing to hang with Searle, who was just hitting 140s for fun. I think he hit about 40 140s in that game and still lost. But yeah, I think if Joyce can kind of just maintain that level of performance, and there's enough evidence in the last few months to suggest he can. Look what he did at the World Grand Prix. Look what he's done in other tournaments as well. Players' Championship finals, he had a good little run as well. It's no flash in the pan with Joyce. He's a really, really solid, comfortable operator. I don't think he likes all the media furor and attention. And of course, you get that when you play Luke Littler. He's probably doing a little bit more interviews than normal. He's probably having a little bit more attention on him than normal. But ultimately, the man they're all there to see is Littler. Now, Joyce got beat 5-0 by Luke Humphries in the World Grand Prix semi-final. I wouldn't overlook into that, because Joyce actually averaged in the high 90s, which for double and double out is the equivalent of averaging 105, 106 in a normal game. So he certainly didn't wilt. He just bumped into a little bit of a generational performance from Humphries. Now, of course, the same can happen here, but it's certainly factored into the price, isn't it? I cannot believe how short Littler is to win this. He's 1-10 in some places. It's absolute disrespect to Ryan Joyce. Ryan Joyce has just dumped out Ryan Searle, averaging 98, 99 and going about 70% on his doubles over 7 sets. I mean, it's disgraceful pricing. And yes, Littler can win this 4-0, no doubt about it. But I think at the prices, you simply have to be taking a chance on Joyce. So I'll have a point on him at 7-1. And I'm also going to split half point on two correct scores, 4-2 and 4-1, which are 22-1 and 25-1 respectively. I do think if Joyce has got to get it done, he can't really take it to a last set. Littler's shown that he powers to the line, hasn't he? In both of his games against Ian White and Meikle, the best of him was at the end of the contest. But I just think there's a tremendous amount of pressure on this young man's shoulders, so much expectation, even more so with Luke Humphries going out now. There's almost a presumption amongst the general masses that he's just going to waltz to the final. I think we saw with the tears after the Meikle game that this is an awful lot for him. I think he's feeling the strain of it. I worry a little bit about him on a sort of mental health perspective. But can he continue being put under this strain, and how much it would hit him if he does get knocked out of the World Championship? But look, he's a fantastic player, fantastic talent, brilliant for darts. But I just feel like at the prices, Joyce has been a bit disrespected. I would not be surprised at all if Joyce can replicate that level of performance. It's a really hard man to beat. Really, really hard man to beat. So yeah, we'll watch that one with interest, but a little flutter on Joyce at 7-1 in order for me. Just to summarise those best bets for the last 16, conclusion on Monday then, 2-point win on Chris Dobey to beat Kevin Dukes with the most 180 at 5-6. I think that is a rock solid bet, probably my nap of the day. But if Dobey does get dumped out by Dukes, I'll have my head in my hands, because he's where I'm hanging my hopes now, really, with Humphries' exit. From an outright perspective, anyway. Ricardo Pietreczko to beat Nathan Aspinall 6-5. That's a price play, to be honest. If it was 10-11, I probably wouldn't be involved. But 6-5, I think he has about a 50% chance of winning that game. So that's why I'm playing that one. A point on over 6.5 sets. I do think that this could descend into a real battle and a grind. So that's the reasoning there. Stephen Bunting, I'm expecting him to do a job on Luke Woodhouse, who's had a fantastic run, but maybe just benefited from his opponents. not hitting the standards a little bit, whereas I think Bunting will. Plain and simple, I don't think De Decker or Heta hit their standards. I think Bunting will, and I think he probably does it with a degree of comfort here. A point on Michael van Gerwen to beat Jeffrey De Graaf 4-0 at 16-5, just because I think there's a chance De Graaf runs out of steam, and van Gerwen was really impressive against Brendan Dolan. And then, as discussed, finally, those little flutters on Ryan Joyce at the prices. A point at 7-1, and then half a point on the 4-2 and the 4-1 correct scores at 22 and 25-1, respectively. An immense amount of pressure on young Lukeller and Ryan Joyce. Well, if he can repeat that performance from against Ryan Searle, which there's evidence he could, then it could be a very, very interesting game indeed. Let me know what you fancy then for these last 16 games at the World Darts Championship. No darts tomorrow. We're back New Year's Day with 4 quarterfinals, which I will be previewing up on the channel. I'll try and get that preview video up tomorrow so you've got plenty of time to digest rather than this, which is a little bit of a tight turnaround. But yeah, I hope you're enjoying these videos. If you're new to the channel, please do consider hitting subscribe and give us a thumbs up if you enjoy the videos. I'll be back tomorrow. See you again soon and enjoy the arrows.